Well, folks, it's good to be back with you again for our final case study of this semester. So I enjoyed our discussion last week, and hope you've all had a chance to review the case study this week, number 2, a community of teachers. And we've got 3 scholarly discussion questions that have been posed to us, and let's look at the first one. And I'm going to lead off with that one. I'll read the question for us on question number 1. And remember the case study, I guess before we read the question, the case study, we're looking at Donna and the changes that Donna is making. I think it's Farmville High School or Farmville School. And we're looking at some changes that she's making with observations. And without just going back over the case study, which we've all read, let's look at question number 1. It said, what are guidelines that Donna could have done to provide the teachers with some additional guidelines prior to the grade level meetings? And to start off with that one, I feel like Donna could have been a little bit more specific. I went back and I read the case study a couple of times just to make sure, and I may be missing something, but in part of the first a couple of paragraphs, I think it's paragraph number 2, it talks about that Donna wanted to indicate, or she indicated she wanted to change the standard observations. And that had been conducted in the past. And it said that she wanted to get teachers more involved in their own observations. Well, the thing that was the concern for me, and what other guidelines could Donna have done and give to the teachers ahead of time, I think she could have done a better job rolling out the reason why she's doing the process. One of the things that I look back at it, and it's a book by Simon Sinek, and I've got it here, and I hope I'm not murdering his name, but it's a good leadership book, and it kind of helps bring together some of the research that we've talked about with Whitaker and Marzano, and how they pretty much outline the importance of school leadership and how school leadership really equates to success. Well, part of, I think, the flaw in Donna's leadership, and I really like what she's doing, but I think it could have been better if she had rolled that case out a little bit better to those folks and that initial veteran team that she pulled together, and indicated the why that she wanted to initiate this change. And I think she would have had a better chance of getting buy-in to it. She had a little bit of problems with those 3rd grade teachers kind of, maybe giving some pushback. Possibly could have avoided that with some additional guidelines and some explanation, and kind of influencing the teachers in the school to understand why the change is being initiated. Now, guys, you may have seen some stuff there that I missed, but I tried to look a couple of times to see, where she explained that. And I just couldn't find it. But I think that extra little touch of that why and rolling that out would have really helped make this run a little bit smoother in that process. So, Shay, what are your thoughts on this question number 1? What Donna could have done and provided to the teachers prior to the grade level meetings?
So I think that definitely Donna should have sat down with the group and more explanation on why she wanted to do this, and even go back and present some of the research. Research data giving success on schools who have implemented action plans and done things differently. I looked up a couple people. So Daggett's successful schools from research to action plans and effective school model, strong administration leadership. Donna could have given what her expectations were of the students and of the teachers and what's going to happen with these walkthroughs. Number 2, Foundations of Education Effectiveness by Skirins and Bosher describe cooperative work environments and professional development. And also Marzano adds in what works in schools, challenging goals, and effective feedback and professionalism. Francis Bessalou book called Providing Instruction Leadership Through Classroom Walkthroughs, and the guidelines that Donna, the principal, could have talked to them about is 1, how an effective walkthrough can strengthen and enhance instructional leadership. Like, hey, this is why we're going to do this. This is for the teachers, this is for you guys. She also could have talked about how these Lincoln instructional walkthroughs with critical components of the school improvement plan. She also could have talked to them about what a walkthrough is. Tell them exactly what it is. Like, we're not trying to come in when you say, hey, observation, you're going to be critiqued, you're going to be looked at, we're going to try to figure out like what it is you're doing in your classroom. Teachers, can be on the offensive, or they can open a door and welcome it. And I think if you go over, hey, this is what we're looking for. No one's trying to come in and give you a pink slip because you're an ineffective teacher, but we are trying to just make our school better. This is to make you a better teacher. It's for the students. I think they talked about some of the teachers were veterans and kind of, I should have highlighted it. The older teachers who kind of, where's that? And it felt many staff members would be open to changes if they didn't. Explain to the staff members be asking. Do you guys remember there's one part in here talked about like older teachers who were kind of stuck in their ways and really may not been open to the change?
Third graders.
But
third grade,
was the fourth grade?
Third grade, I think.
Yeah, third grade.
Grade level.
But I think if you present it to them in a way that, hey, this is not for us to come in and just kind of slam you guys, but this is what is expected. So basically, again, hey, what is a walkthrough? It's just a brief focus visit for the purpose of observing instructional delivery, instructional management, and instructional needs. Like, what is it that we need to do different? How can we manage you? How can we do better? She could have talked about why. We're trying to gauge the school climate, and it should and model value of teaching and learning. As far as the admin is concerned. For teachers, we're looking to improve teaching. Hey, we want to strengthen the link with instructional planning and building professional development. So, hey, while we're in these classrooms and watching you guys, we can figure out what professional development that we need to bring into the schools to help you guys. And the only way we can do that if we're in the classroom and observing what's going on and finding out what we need. And also to develop growth plans. If we're not in the classroom, we don't know what to do to make us better as a school. And then as far as for the school, guided instructional practices, developing school-wide professional developments and plans. So I think that if she goes in with these guidelines of the what, the why, and the how, then it changes the receptiveness of the teachers with the classroom walkthroughs.
Rebecca, your thoughts?
I think that, first of all, she needed to focus on the meeting itself. Well-run meetings have the potential to be one of the most effective tools in the work environment. Miller and Pincus, as well as Kirkpatrick, said, defining the productivity of the meeting. So if she had gone in with agendas and explained the outline of how she was going to roll out this procedure with deadlines and the observations and the observation models. I think also being transparent. It talked about, first she went to the superintendent and the cabinet. What were their thoughts? How were they wanting the school to roll out this new model of evaluations? Were there incentives for buy-ins for the teachers? And also the literature, being able to not necessarily evaluate your peers, but critique your peers, I think is helpful. Under Marshall, 2008, he talks about the rate of, keeping teachers, if they're able to critique themselves and critique others, they can work on that mentoring piece that Whitaker talks so much about.
Fantastic. Good gracious, you guys are just research beasts. I mean, you throw it out there, goodness. So I feel like I'm just hanging on here just a little bit, but that was fantastic. I appreciate the input on that. And I see some common themes in our thought process already, but let's jump into the question number 2. And it says, how could teachers' final plans be effective for the instructional process? So we're looking at how those final plans that they put together, how can that be effective for the instructional process? Rebecca, we lead off with you. I'll jump in, and then Shay, you'll wrap us up on on question number 2 before we get to that final question. So Rebecca, what's your thoughts?
So I've got a quote that I was looking at. We define connected educators simply by the ones who are active and constantly seeking new opportunities and resources to grow as professionals. And that was by Todd Whitaker.
Mhm.
I feel like if the teachers saw themselves in the videotape, they would be able to go through their lessons successfully and demonstrate how are they assessing, how are they checking for understanding, and it would allow for self-reflection. And I saw that with Penny and Co, that videos have become the new accessibility and have increased the interest in videos for teacher development. Because the third grade teachers, agreed that they were willing to be videotaped, and that would help them for, critiquing and implementing their plans for future lessons.
I guess when I looked at this one, I looked back at Marzano and Marzano, and I looked specifically at the text that he has with Frontier and I think Livingston too, and it's about effective supervision. And in this case, we're looking at supervision, but we're looking at observations and so forth. So Marzano and those folks made the case that if you have excellent teachers and they're achieving at higher level, those students in the classes are going to naturally be better. That's consistent throughout what we've looked at. It's important though in this case that the principal in this case study has got to find a way to help improve the development of the teachers at her school. I think they would not be doing this without some sort of need there. And again, I don't know that was fully outlined. So in developing this system at the Farmville School, teachers will have to find a way to, to expose the teaching methods in other classrooms. And by exposing those teaching methods, I think those walkthrough observations or those observations, I'm kind of hung up on the walkthrough part, but I think in this case, it's talking about just general observations. That's going to help those teachers kind of expose those teaching techniques. It's going to expose those excellent teachers to some of the folks that may be, younger, that may be, learning. So just to be able to go out and watch a colleague do something and maybe a different approach is going to help hone those skills. And if you look back at Darsh, they talk about good mentoring and how that's an ongoing process. And I think maybe one of the problems with that third grade level is, they're veteran teachers that may be set in their ways, but this could be a good process to kind of reinvigorate those third grade teachers that are giving a little bit of pushback by making the case that good mentoring is an ongoing process and an ability for us to be able to observe each other kind of gives a good foundation for this mentoring process. So those were a couple of my ideas as to, what the final plans could have done for the effectiveness in this process. Shay, your thoughts?
For this question, I looked at Daggett's System for Effective Instruction and Instruction Research and Best Practices Meet. And in this, he talked about how all teaching is more effective when effectively supported. And I think having, when you go in the classroom and you're being observed by your peers, that they're going to try to support you. I think I feel more comfortable being observed by my peer. Like if you were to come to a classroom rather than my principal, because a principal comes like, oh, you get tight and you're thinking job. Whereas my peer would come and I feel more comfortable when we're having that after discussion about the observation, that we can kind of talk on an equal level versus feeling like the principal's coming in and saying, well, you did this, and this wrong, you did this is right, or you feeling like you're kind of sitting in the hot seat. But coming from a peer, you and I can have this conversation. And a lot of times when we do the peer reviews, walkthroughs, it's coming from, someone in your department, another math teacher. Hey, well, what's working for you? Maybe this will work for you, and kind of have that conversation versus kind of being, I guess, talked at. Also, he talks about improving instruction requires a supportive and aligned system. Instruction should be aligned with the vision set by the leadership. Also with this, and Donna is the leader of the school. So the teachers need to figure out like, hey, how can what we're doing align with what our principal's vision is for our school? So we need to make sure that what we're doing on instruction is in the vision or is the vision of our leadership. And I think sometimes as teachers, we can get focused on what we want to have happen, what we want our classrooms to look like, and not really understand that even though we have our style and way of teaching, it should align with what the vision of the school is and the leadership. Research also says, the first job of instructional leadership is to reinforce the vision set forth by the organizational leadership. To do so, instructional leadership must offer proof statements to the staff, students, and stakeholders. Research and authoritative testimony that corroborate the urgent need for improvement in student achievements. And so with that being said, yes, we want to kind of have our own style of teaching, but it has to be in line with what leadership says they want for their school. And, at the end of the day, if my principal says, hey, this is how I want you to do it, and this is what we're going to focus on, then I need to figure out my teaching style to align with the vision of the school. We all need to share that same vision. And if I have a different vision from what leadership has, it's not going to work. And I think it's obvious, even if it's a grade level, like the third grade, teachers level, like I think it's pretty obvious in this 2 paragraphs that they were kind of like, we're going to do our thing, and Miss Donna, or Principal Donna, has a different vision of what she wants the school to look like.
Okay, cool deal. Well, moving to our final question that we have, question number 3, and Joe, you're going to lead us off on this one. It says, how would the principal be able to evaluate whether the new observation format that they've been discussing is actually working for the students? So how should the principal be able to evaluate that? So Shay, lead us off, and Rebecca, and then I'll wrap us up on this one.
Evaluate. Yeah, so this is what I'm saying. So recent research indicates that instructional coaching is the most effective strategy for improving instructional practices. 5 specific approaches to redesigning meaningful evaluation systems towards improving teacher practices. Streamline and implement tools, and being flexible. Design systems as formative feedback process, peer teacher, teacher leader observations, support evaluators to become coaches, involve more people, and use of video. So what research says and what the principal is trying to do absolutely lines up. So what I think for as far as how is she going to figure out how this works is you ask the teachers, because we are what is going to be the change. We're either going to be on board or we're not. Mm-hmm. So as we have used in ABTEL task 2, task 1, we use teacher working survey. Ask the teachers, like, is this working for you? We asked a couple questions in my survey. How helpful is the feedback when you're being observed? Is the observation consistent? What are you getting back? So I think how we figure out is if the new system is working, is that you go to the people that it's working for and you ask the teachers. So I think using some type of survey or getting the feedback from the teachers is going to let us know if we're being successful in what we're doing.
Good deal. Rebecca, what's your thoughts?
I kind of linked it into 3 different categories. I think that she could check to see if it's working with mentoring. So with Whitaker, the teachers do the best with the skills they have. If they can evaluate themselves with these video recordings and the teacher walkthroughs, then they can work on professional development to develop more skills and make sure that they have what they need in the classroom for the students to be successful. Is it going to lead back to formative and summative assessments with the students and checking for mastery? Is the lesson to the point where at least 80% of your students are able to master the skill at the time? And that goes to what Marzana was talking about with instructional units being compared to against the standard. And finally, the reflection piece, like Shay was talking about, having the teachers do a self-evaluation survey and show that they're being engaged with the lesson, and how are they reflecting back to what the principal needs and the shared vision of the school.
Yeah, before you go, Matt, I'm sorry, I just had, I
Jump
think it's
in.
kind of the same questions that Rebecca said, 3 parts. I forgot to turn my page. But another thing is it successful for the students? And I have a couple questions is, did you identify and understand the value, the process, and the tools in the implementation of an effective walkthrough? Did you discover how it can strengthen and enhance instructional leadership? And the last question, did you see the link, the instructional walkthrough with other critical components of the school improvement? So those are some other specific questions that can be asked and answered to figure out if, we're at, if it's working for the students and for the teachers.
Right. And in my comments on this question 3, I struggle with this one a little bit more just because, it was not identified as to how this plan was going to be evaluated. And it was almost like this case study. It went trudging along. There's this great idea. We're talking about how to get those teachers aligned with this, and maybe Donna didn't roll it out with the why as much as she could. And then question 3 says, well, how's this evaluated? And it's just not mentioned in the case study at all. It's almost like this great idea, we've rolled it out, it's going to work, and then we don't do anything to evaluate what's happening. And I go back to the discussions we've had in class with providing the gap analysis, and there's no mention of any data collection whatsoever. And I thought that was interesting because, when you look at Marzano and Toth, they talk about how, evaluation is supposed to be, and I'm quoting here, thoughtful, multi-phased implementation and a monitoring plan. And none of that is here. And they go on to talk about the planning and the implementation and the fidelity and the efficacy and even the sustainability of that. And that's just one of the things that wasn't mentioned here. And I wonder if that was kind of intentional to get us to think a little bit, or sometimes do you see this in a real world setting? And I know I've seen it with our school. They'll roll out this new thing that's supposed to fix an issue or address, well, maybe we should say address a need. And then it's left there without any monitoring or evaluation. And I thought that was kind of interesting. We wrapped that case study discussion up with a pretty cool idea, but no way to monitor that. And that kind of goes counter to what we've been discussing here in class and what we're doing with this APTL deal. So I think we have to go back and look at the research again and add that to that monitoring element, that evaluation, and figure out where you're going to collect the data to observe what's taking place with this. So as we have attacked all 3 of those questions pretty hard there with some great research, you guys, you're throwing out some really cool stuff, and I appreciate your discussion. What's your final review and reflections on this case study? I kind of alluded to that. I started chasing another rabbit again and alluded to kind of my thoughts on the case study. What's your thoughts on the case study in general before we wrap this discussion up today?
Go ahead. I think personally, Ms. Harrington, Donna, she didn't approach the staff the way I would like her to have. I think if she had had a general faculty meeting and explained that they were going to do this new program, and then met with her representatives, and then had the scholarly discussion within the grade level teams, I would have felt more comfortable. If this was presented to me as something that multiple people had discussed, and I was feeling like I was having to implement it instead of being part of the buy-in, I personally would not have felt comfortable. And that goes back to what Matt was saying about, lack of rubrics or, 4.0 opportunities for us to see the breakdown of what they would be looking for, I think is also key.
Rebecca, I'm just question right quick. Did it bother you that she kind of went to this select group of teachers? Is that problematic? Do you think before she rolled it out to the faculty in general?
I think every school has their school board leadership team. I don't have a problem with that. I think I have a problem with she didn't flush it out or just introduce it to the whole staff first.
Yeah. And
that's probably what led to maybe the 3rd graders being, on the fence, was they were veteran teachers and they kind of felt out of the loop.
Yeah. If she'd have went to the school improvement team, or not just picked an ad hoc group of teachers. I don't know. I don't know how I feel on that, but I was curious to your thoughts. You kind of were mentioning that a little bit with her rollout. So I think that could have been done a little bit better.
I agree.
Shay, any reflections, review of?
Yeah, I'm actually going to, first, I want to just make sure I go back and say, when I talked about those 5 approaches, the 5 specific approaches, redesigning warning, that came from Michael Moody. I did not quote my source on that research. I wanted to make sure I throw that out there. But in this case study, and if you read the very first paragraph, it doesn't talk about Donna or anything. It is the overall thought process of a leader and what they can do. And it says the principal can effectively plan and implement needed changes when they involve staff fully from the beginning through the evaluation process. Teachers and the teachers involved can help find the best way to introduce the changes to the rest of the staff. Now, Rebecca, we talked about, yes, I think you go and you let the overall big picture to the staff, and you give them time, because we're going to chirp and we're going to complain, and some people will be like, yeah, hey, I need this, because we have all different levels of teaching. All of you have those overachievers who are like on board, come observe me every day, I want PD, I want whatever. Then you have the ones that are like, yeah, I want to be better, and then you have the ones like, just leave me alone, let me do my thing, I'm ready for payday. But I feel like, yes, you have this meeting and you let the entire staff know, like, hey, this is what's going on. Like, we want to be better as a school. Because I think if you're teaching, like, yeah, that's your job. Like, you want to teach, you want to be better, no matter how motivated you are, like you want to be in front of the class and you want your kids to learn. So I think, yeah, you come and you have this staff meeting, everyone, and then you pull in the next group level of teachers, because you do need to have that group who is loyal to you and who can get in those teachers' ears, who may be kind of on the line to, yeah, I kind of in, I kind of not, but you get the whole group, and then you send out your group to get everyone else to buy in, because I may be able to explain to my department a little bit better than the principal, or I know my group, I know what to say to my small group. Hey, yeah, we need to do this because of blah, blah, blah. Remember such and such, or when we had this situation in our department and this happened, if we do this, it's going to make it much better. So I do agree with you on that, like kind of her approach. And then when we talked about number 1, like the guidelines, what could she have done better? You kind of have to make it, I'm gonna say, make it our idea, but if you give teachers ownership in what's going on, like, I'm always going to take better care of what I own than someone else. Like, somebody's gonna borrow my car or borrow, like, yeah, whatever, drive it through the mud and do whatever, but I'm gonna be like, yo, I'm not taking that right turn, I'm gonna stay on the concrete because I don't want to get my car dirty because it's mine. So you kind of got to be able to present it and let the teachers own into it, and then, hey, I'm gonna take this puppy and run with it, I got to get first place. So I think that, overall, I think, if she just presents it differently, then we can get more people to kind of buy into it.
Right. With this limited lens that we've got through a case study, do you think Donna's a good principal?
I think she's a good principal. I think that she's a good principal. She means well. She just, in this situation, I felt like kind of maybe didn't approach it the way that she needed to.
Right. Rebecca, what do you think? You think she's a good principal by what we're seeing? It's just a limited, lens.
I think she could have done better. I mentioned, I think in my first question, the transparency. If she had gone to the full faculty, if she had told them, hey, this is, research-based practice coming from the superintendent's blessing, I think that she would have gotten more buy-in, like Shay was reconfirming.
I agree with both of you. I think I like her intentions involving teachers, trying. I think it's an effort to empower and, motivate them in a leadership role. I just don't know that procedurally, it was a flawless plan. I think she could have done, things a little bit differently to kind of be more proactive in her approach, because then she has to react to the situation, especially with that third grade level of teachers. So.
And also, and I remember reading in there, it talked about how she had confidence in her staff. And obviously you're not going to send your staff out to do peer observation if you don't think that they can do that. But I think it's different if some of our principals says, hey, yeah, Shay, go and tell, staff, like, I know they can do it. Now, praise and confidence coming from a principal directly to the staff versus coming from me to the staff is different. So I think, like, she goes in and has that meeting that she has with that select group, with the entire group, and then it's going to be received differently, because now it's like, yeah, okay, well, she believes that we can do this, and they hear it directly from her.
Right.
So being that she did have that confidence in her staff, like, you don't get that confidence in your staff if you don't believe they can do it, and if you're not a good leader and you have relationship to know that your staff is good. But I also believe that that your teachers have to hear that from the leader, and not from, trickle down, water down, two people
Right.
out.
Right. Absolutely. Good point. Good point.
We all want to hear that we're doing a good job, and we want to hear it from the person in charge. Like, man, the president called me, said, Shay, you're awesome. I'm like, heck yeah, president called me and said I was good. I don't care what all y'all can say whatever you want to about me, but I got it straight from the top man.
There you go.
Or woman.
Well, guys, that's all that's on the agenda for this. We hit that pretty hard real quick too. And I'll tell you, I'm amazed at the pieces of research that you guys have brought in to justify the response to those questions. I'm in awe of that. I mean, and I can see that in, doing the peer review. You guys have just thrown in some really good information. So great administrators in the work here, so one day, and Dr. Revis, I think in her comments have encouraged me one time. In one of the recent comments, she said, always put that research first. Because, when you make your decisions, you're looking at things that needs to be a good foundation, I think. So you guys have got it going on when it comes to that. So I appreciate the discussion today. Anything before we hit the stop recording deal? Oh crap. I did not start recording.
Yeah, you did. I see the button says recording. It came to me
Just
and said,
kidding.
hey.
April Fool's was yesterday, but I had to be a jerk today, Shay. I mean, hey, and I'll do it, but just because I got to be a smart aleck with that, one time I will not hit that, and it will be, ugly. So, but I think I've got it right. And it's been good working with you guys today. I'm gonna go ahead before y'all get mad, and I'm going to stop this recording.